And welcome to another episode of Quackaholics Anonymous. I'll see how this goes. I've been dealing with a kind of a sinus infection the past couple of days, and I've been coughing every 5 minutes, so I don't know if I'll make it all the way through this one or not. That's probably why I got the pause button ready, just in case. So I was looking through different things this week in my spare time. I don't have a lot, but trying to think of what I was going to talk about, and particularly hateful term I used to hear in the meetings happened to come up in a discussion where these old timers will arrogantly sit on their smug, hubris thrones of self righteousness in these meetings, and they will say to you, "Feelings are not facts." There's a bit of irony present in people saying feelings are not facts, considering the ones who say these things are generally the most emotional people you see in AA meetings. It's kind of weird how that works, the double standard there. If an old timer is pissed off at some new person, didn't understand their place, and shared outside the acceptable language of the AA lingo, it's okay for them to be upset, and it's okay for them to tell people to go out and drink more alcohol, that they're not ready, and it's okay for them to have their little temper tantrums and their hissy fits and everything else. But remember, feelings are not facts. I was unfortunate enough to get to know some of these assholes in their personal lives, and well, actually, I can't say that was entirely a bad thing because it helped me. It helped me get away from AA. I mean, when you're around these scumbags for any length of time, and you get to see what they're truly about, you really know what a phony crock of shit AA is. I mean, I already knew towards my last couple of years that it was all a big fraud and a big cult, but you didn't realize just how low down these people are until you get to know them in your personal life. And in one way, I can't say that I'm totally regretful of the fact that I got to know what kind of bastards they really are, but on another way, it is really unfortunate because it brings with it a certain level of cynicism that I don't think I'm ever going to get over. And I was already cynical before. But these people were the most angry, bitter, petty, greedy, childish bunch of people I've ever been around. I've never quite seen anything quite like it. It was almost like a phenomenon. I mean, if you could picture such a thing as sociopathic kindergartners, that's kind of what these people remind me of. Like if you had people that thought like little school children, only they were dangerous to boot. That's pretty much a synopsis of what I saw them like behind their backs. But these are the people that tell you in meetings, and they usually say this when someone's coping with real problems or real issues, or is dealing with something that is unbearable to them or threatening their own sobriety, as they used to say in cult speak. They'll say, "Well, feelings are not facts." Well, what they're really saying. What they're really saying is I'm not getting a chance to run my fucking mouth during my cult time, and people with real issues are interrupted. That's why they're always telling people to shut up when they're new, and that's why they're always telling people to be quiet, that they don't know what they're talking about. They tell people those things because it might get in the way of their 1 hour a day high. I mean, and that's really what it's all about. That was another pathetic thing I got to know when I was around these people in their personal lives. They lived. I mean, they totally lived for that 1 hour when they could get there and hopefully get called on. I mean, that was their high point of their day. That was the high point of their life. They had nothing else outside of it. And they couldn't have anybody, God forbid, with real problems and real issues that needed real help. It might screw up their meeting. Feelings are not facts. I don't know. If I'm trying to cross the street with a lot of traffic and I'm looking both ways and I'm feeling a little apprehensive, and feel the need to proceed with caution, I think I'm not going to say to myself, well, feelings are not facts, and just walk out in the middle of traffic. I think I'm actually going to trust my feelings on that, trust my instincts. I could make a whole other video about that crap in their literature where they talk about instincts gone awry. That would take up a whole entire video of itself because it's just so patently absurd, and it's just so pathetically stupid to talk about an instinct going awry. I mean, it's just they take these words and they twist them around into these weird definitions that don't even apply to the real world, and they act like that they're living on some separate universe with separate laws and separate physics and separate ideas uh, that apply only to quackaholics, like them talking about, speaking of feelings, that anger is a dubious luxury we cannot afford as quackaholics. Well, dubious luxury. I mean, I've never met anybody that thought of anger as a luxury, period. I've never seen anybody lose their temper in a real stressful circumstance or go off the handle or get really upset to the point that they have to calm down afterwards and said, man, that was luxurious. I can't wait to experience something like that again. I just love feeling like that, whether they're addicted or not. I've never really personally saw anybody that enjoyed, getting angry. I never saw nobody going along saying, man, I'm having a good day today. Everything is just going wonderful. I just got to get angry to make the day a whole lot better because otherwise it's a miserable fucking day without my anger. Luxury to me doesn't, luxury and anger don't even go hand in hand together. And you can't say, well, that's, is not for normal people, but for quackaholics. No, since A, you can't prove there is any such thing as an alcoholic, and B, even for people like myself who were hardcore heavy drinkers that almost drank themselves to death, I never enjoyed being pissed off. I've never enjoyed being irritated and pissed off. So I've never felt luxurious. If you ask me what a luxury is, what would be something luxurious, for you? I don't know, getting the backpack across Europe, maybe I would consider that a luxurious experience. But anger, losing my temper, getting upset, not much of a luxury there. They even take this a step. They even take this a step further in the fact that they say almost that there's absolutely no excuse for you to be angry, no matter what the circumstances are. They actually have the nerve to say we feel that justified anger ought to be left to those better qualified to handle it. What does that mean exactly? Better qualified to handle it. In terms of justified anger. That makes absolutely no sense at all to me. Am I going to say to maybe I'll call a family member long distance who hasn't got a drinking problem and say, you need to be angry for me because I feel that my anger is justified, but I can't have it. Somebody better qualified than me has to have it. Not to mention the fact that anger is a normal human emotion, but here we go with the feeling stuffing. And feeling stuffing is a very definite telltale sign of cult behavior, telling you that you can't trust your feelings, telling you can't trust your instincts, telling you that you can't trust anything in your thinking whatsoever. That's one thing that the Quackaholics Anonymous Fellowship likes to do in your early days when you're a newcomer. You can't trust what you're thinking. You ever heard those stupid assholes say, whatever it is you're thinking about doing, just do the opposite. Just go opposite to whatever you think. Well, let's see. When I'm going to bed at night and I'm setting my alarm clock to get up early in the morning to go to work, I guess I should do opposite of that. Since, I'm a quackaholic, I guess I should turn the alarm clock off and be late and get fired because what I'm thinking about doing is opposite to that. But it's another sly way of crushing your own individuality and crushing your own feelings. And really, the feeling stuff, it doesn't just stop with anger in Quackaholics Anonymous, but it was one of the first things that actually kind of got me to wondering. Because I would see all these people shammering about how, if you're angry, then that means you have a part in this. Or if you're angry, you're doing that because of something to do with you personally, like you're just angry because your ego got hurt. Well, I don't really get why identifying that as a cause for your anger deflates or takes away from the validity of why you are angry. It's almost like underneath the surface of this, what they're really saying is that you're not normal. You're not a normal person, and your anger is always delusional. Your anger is always stemming from some twisted purposes or twisted causes. They'll say anger is but a symptom in the Quackaholic book, but That's about as far as they get. They don't really get down to root causes and conditions. You know, that's another thing that used to piss me off to no end about AA is they would go on and on about root causes and root conditions for what happens with us and root causes and all this other crap. But their idea of root causes is writing down an inventory of everything you've done wrong and sitting around and blatting that over and over in meetings and calling it selfishness, self-centeredness, anger, ego, pride. And, you know, it's worse than the bleeding of a bunch of sheep in some ways. You know, I mean, they don't have anything that they can identify as symptomatic to what's going on. They can just say, oh, it was my ego. Okay, well, what does that actually mean? I mean, do you know what that means? Or are you just saying what your sponsor told you to say? And are you saying what you've heard a million other people in the room say, and you're just repeating it? I mean, you know, let's just say for the sake of argument, they were correct. And I said, okay, this was because it affected my ego. How in the hell does that do anything to make me get any better? Or how does that help me cope with that? Or how does it help me get over it by telling me I can't have it? I mean, by suppressing the fact that I get angry at times, by suppressing the fact that I have feelings, by saying they're not there. And not only do they tell you you can't have these feelings, they turn around and they tell you to have these feelings will lead you to getting drunk. In other words, to deny a part of human nature, to deny a part of your makeup, that's the only way that you can stay sober. If you actually, God forbid, get angry, it's very, very dangerous for you. You know, resentment is the number one offender. They don't ever explain how they know it's the number one offender, but whatever. Most of the people I've seen who have had to deal with severe anger issues, now this is people I've seen personally, I can't speak for everybody on that, but or myself even, I'll speak for myself. When I was in therapy that I needed, CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, did more for me in 12 sessions than all 12 years in Quackaholics Anonymous. But when you're going to talk about anger, you also have to talk about, you know, what your anger is about, coping with your anger, managing your anger, all this other kind of healthy ways to deal with your anger, all kinds of other things. But nowhere at no time in therapy did a qualified doctor tell me, well, you can't be angry. Now, okay, you're delusional and you're insane, and only normal people can have this luxury. I mean, you just can't use this luxury. You can't feel, you can't think. You know, as a matter of fact, a person cannot help how they feel, in spite of their horse shit about feelings are not facts. Feelings are very legitimate things that motivate us far more than people would realize, even than I realized. I mean, you know, what is it? What is it? Schopenhauer says man cannot will what he wills. Ultimately, in other words, you can't really help how you feel. The way you feel, be it healthy or unhealthy, is just there. If you've got serious mental issues with it, that's where therapy comes in to help you learn how to cope with these feelings, to manage these feelings, to put these feelings in perspective. And in some cases, like mine, you know, where they put you on medication, that's done wonders for me. I mean, I used to be so eat up with anxiety. I used to be so eat up with just crippling anxiety about everything that it made it hard for me at times to function. And when I was drinking, the anxiety went away. After having gone through therapy and after having been on antidepressants for a little while, I don't have that anxiety hardly at all anymore. I have a healthy amount, which every human being should have, unless they're a sociopath, but I don't have that crippling problem any longer. So what would I have done if I'd have tried to just do it the AA way? If I'd have just said, well, this anxiety is my ego. It's my pride. And I need to just get off my pride, my ego. Otherwise, I'll drink again. Well, guess what? I ended up drinking again when I tried to treat my own mental hangups, my own mental illnesses or issues with 12-step bullshit. I always ended up drunk again. Now, of course, this is the point where the angry quackaholics come in and they say, well, just because it didn't work out for you doesn't mean that it doesn't work out for me, or doesn't mean it hadn't helped millions and millions and millions of people. I love how they bring up that millions of people thing. I mean, I'll have to dig more into some more studies that I can link up on these videos about the abysmal failure rate that is AA. But I really am curious about another thing, because nobody has ever been able to answer this for me with any degree of satisfaction. and that is an organization that you cannot graduate from, an organization that keeps you in a state of perpetual sickness, an organization that tells you all the days of your life you're diseased, you're sick, you're irrational, you can't trust your emotions, you can't trust your feelings. How do they measure what making it or being successful even is? If you go 25 years without a drink and you have a beer on the weekend by whatever reason, does that mean you're not successful any longer? I mean, where do they measure millions of people have been helped? I mean, do you know that all these millions of people have been sober for X amount of years? But that doesn't prove anything, because in your definition of a disease of alcoholism, you're just a drink away. That means I could go 70 years without a drink and I would still be just a drink away. So there's no way to say that it's a successful program at all. Just by the by, I've noticed one other thing since getting out of the Quackaholic cult. I don't have to go around writing down my feelings and trying to determine where I was wrong and everything all the time anymore. I don't have some pile of shit asshole sponsor peeping over my shoulder with all of his phony fucking advice, along with all those other AA Quackaholics that just enjoyed seeing me at my lowest points, that had all these pronouncements to make on what was wrong with me. And none of them with even a slight clue as to what they were talking about. But I've noticed that being away from him and being out from underneath that unhealthy environment, I don't really worry too much about my feelings these days, as far as trusting them, or as far as how I behave. For one thing, I've noticed since getting away from the cult of Quackaholics Anonymous, in pretty much everything in my life, I'm pretty much an ordinary dude. I mean, it's not like when somebody pisses me off, I go into some freak out zone and have a berserker rage take hold of me, and then I run to a liquor store and down 20 gallons of vodka because I can't handle my anger. I mean, I don't really behave in any kind of way that I feel is all that worthwhile of looking at myself and looking at myself and looking at myself and looking at myself and talking about myself and talking about myself day in and day out like they do. I mean, it is really a very unhealthy culture when all you think about is yourself and how you have to focus on yourself and all you can look at is yourself. I mean, it's like constant reinforced narcissism. And here's another thing that I don't know who said it. I don't know who brought it up to me, but it kind of occurred to me this week when I was going over topics for this. Anger, if you get angry, you're going to get drunk. If you have fear, you're going to get drunk. If you have pride, you're going to get drunk. If you got any kind of ego about you whatsoever, you're going to get drunk. So in other words, what AA wants, or what they're trying to get you to strive for in all their progress, not perfection talk, they're trying to get you to a place where you don't have any feelings except serenity. You don't have any ability to think or question anything because you're just a brainless puppet of their higher power, AA God. And yet you have to spend your whole life worrying about drinking again. In other words, you have to spend every moment of every day thinking about the fact that you have a drunk right around the corner waiting on you. And it seems to me like if you spend your whole entire life thinking about staying away from a drink, talking about how you have to stay away from a drink, talking about how alcohol controls you, talking about what you did when you were drinking, if that's all you think about and focus on, then in a very realistic sense, alcohol is still controlling you. Alcohol is still controlling everything about you. I mean, the way they obsessed about everything when I was in those rooms and the way they obsessed about every movement you make, to the point that if you get annoyed because your air conditioner unit or your heater unit doesn't work right off the bat, it might be a symptom of some evil, diabolical craving working its way up because of the disease. When you live like that, then that tells me that, really and truly, your whole life is centered around alcohol. Your whole life is centered around drinking. I mean, I've noticed how little I think about liquor ever since I've gotten away from them. I've noticed how little any of that really affects my life today. I pretty much am able to wake up in the morning and do a normal day without having to worry about, that irritated me. Does that mean I'm about to get drunk? Or I felt that feeling. Does that mean I'm about to get drunk? I mean, And they can't make up their mind what it is that gets you drunk. I mean, first it's resentments, then it's anger, then it's pride, then it's greed, then it's lust, then it's the seven deadly sins, then it's allergies, then it's everything and anything and all things except for the fact that a guy feels bad and drinking makes him feel better. Such an unhealthy obsession with feelings from a group of people that tells you feelings are not facts. I was looking through some of these stupid notes from the Quackaholic book. I refuse to read whole blocks of paragraphs for these videos for anyone, but I noticed they had one line about emotional insecurity. The most common symptoms are worry, anger, self-pity, and depression. Well, I mean, why? Because Bill says so. I mean, Bill didn't seem to have a problem too much in the way of emotional insecurity. I mean, in terms of how he treated other people, he wasn't very considerate of their feelings. I mean, considering the fact he screwed around on his wife all the days of her life and left half of his estate to a mistress, considering the fact he didn't have no problem doing the things he did, but it seems like he was worried about everybody else's symptomatic behavior. Very, very typical of all the old timers I ever met. They're so quick to point out all these half-ass smokescreen reasons why everybody behaves the way they do. Yet at the same time, because they got a double-digit badge, that gives them the right to treat people any kind of way they feel like and do any kind of thing they want to do. I never will forget bringing up a guy that was pretty much was a habitual thief. Bringing that up to a certain person in AA or Quackaholics Anonymous there, and pointing out what he was doing to sponsees and things like that. And not surprisingly to me now, surprisingly to me then, the person looked at me and he said, well, how long has he been sober and how long have you been sober? In other words, AA judges your spirituality, your worth, by how long you claim to go without a drink. That's another thing that I can't help but bring up, even though it's off topic too. But have you ever noticed these people sit in meetings, they openly admit they're liars, they openly admit they're con artists and scam artists, and they openly admit that they're perverts, they openly admit to everything, but I'm supposed to believe them when they say, I haven't had a drink in 27 years. You know, gee, I mean, if you're going to lie to me about all this other stuff you're doing, why am I supposed to believe you're being honest when you claim you hadn't had a drink in all this time? Of course, it's a convenient thing for them to outlaw the feeling of anger right off the bat, because if you get angry about the behavior you see in AA, they'll tell you that it's, of course, you're to blame for that. In fact, they got it fixed where every time you're angry or frustrated or irritated, it somehow magically translates to being all your fault. What's that one thing they used to say? For every finger you point, you got three pointing back. Or if, in other words, if you see what I was just talking about, you see someone stealing from someone and you're angry about that, the anger is just a symptom. What it really is your ego is bruised because you're not able to steal from the people and get away with it. I don't know how people can just buy into this. I don't know how I bought into it for so long. I mean, I think the thing that used to kill me the most is I heard stuff that bothered me, but I was willing to look the other way because at that time I kept thinking to myself, I bought the poison of this. I bought the poison of these people have gone a long time without a drink, so they must know what they're talking about. It never occurred to me for some reason to think at that time that they could be lying about that. Of course, that was from a number of years when I didn't really know what was going on behind the scenes. My first 2-3 years in AA, I actually thought those people all had it together. I actually thought I was the only one, and when I did see a couple of things that bothered me, when I did see instances of gossip and stuff like that, it would bother me. But I would think, well, we got a few bad apples here and there, but we can't blame the whole organization for that. But then the longer I stayed, it was almost like it would have became a challenge to find somebody who wasn't worthless scum. I mean, the only friends I made in AA, I have made friends in AA that I still keep in touch with, but they were people like me. Most of them aren't in AA any longer. And the people who are, they were still like I was when I met them. I mean, they were people that they weren't in with the in crowd. They weren't one of the gurus. They weren't one of the old timers. They wasn't the center of attention in AA. I guess if I'm going to wrap this up before I have another coughing fit with this sinus infection, I've had to pause a few times because of that, by the way. But I would say that you need to, if you're still trapped in AA, still court ordered into AA, or still having to go to AA, if you're one of those people like I was for a long time that's just going to AA because you're just not ready to quit yet, which is okay, I understand. Uh, don't ever let them tell you can't trust your feelings, and don't ever let anybody else tell you how you can feel and how you can think and what you can do. And I guess that'll be it for now. I'll see you guys next week, hopefully.